Hi, everybody. My name is Abigail. I am the Director of Design for the DN conference. We're so happy to have you here today. I study architecture. I'm currently in Israel, and I'm very happy to introduce you to Miss Kay Unger, who is a wonderful fashion designer, an entrepreneur, and a philanthropist. And she's also the chair of the Board of Governors for the Parsons School of Design, and we are very, very excited to have her on board. Would you like to introduce yourself very briefly and add to what I just said?
Oh. Hi, everybody. I'm Kay Unger, as we mentioned. And it's so interesting because I was just discussing with Abigail that I'm originally from Chicago and that I can tell you that's where my career began. And as an 8-year-old, I actually wrote a letter and I said, when I grow up, I want to, what I really want to do is design the windows of Marshall Field's, which is a department store, which is now a Macy's. And if I can't do that, I want to be a figure skater because I love, love, love the costumes. And if I can't do that, I want to be a mom because moms get all the great clothes. But last of all, if I can't do any of those, I would really like to be a fashion designer. And so from that age, I learned to sew. I used to actually take the bedspreads off the beds at night when my parents went to sleep and sew them into skirts. And my parents thought our housekeeper was stealing. And
Oh, no.
I always, from day one, I think, or from the time I began, I used to take the towels and make them into robes. I used to read about it when I learned how to read. And when I think about how I started, and where we are today, the fact that I was reusing and repurposing things in the house, because that's all I had, is so much a part of what we're going to talk about today, because where we are in fashion is so different. And it's so interesting. I started at the Art Institute in Chicago, then I went to Washington University in St. Louis as a painter. And that's where I got my sense of color. I'm very well known for my prints. I'm wearing print, although this is not one of mine. I'll talk about it later. But because I had sense of color, but I also knew I wanted to make a living, and I was never going to make a living as a painter. I wanted to keep it for myself. So after my freshman year in college, I switched to fashion, and I became a freshman again. Then I met my husband number one, Unger, who gave me my great last name. And he was going to be moving to New York. And so I said, well, maybe I'll try and get into Parsons School of Design. And I did. And I started over. So I was a freshman 3 years in a row. But I had a goal. And someone once said to me, follow your artistic abilities. And I did. And my goal was always, here's what I want to try and do next. And let's see if I can accomplish it. So my goal was, if I could do well in school, then maybe I could really be a fashion designer. So soon after I graduated from Parsons, I got my first job with Jeffrey Bean. Now, most of you are too young to know who he is, but if you know anything about fashion, you'll learn about him. And I was his assistant along with Issey Miyake, a very famous Japanese designer. Anyway, when I graduated, I went to work for a designer and I did very, very well. And then I started to work, I got a job designing my own collection for a company called Teal Trina Narell. And Narell is a very famous name. Anyway, I loved it. It was great, but eventually decided to leave. Went to a company who promised me everything. And you will learn this, whether you're in architecture, whether you're in product design, whether you're in the sales, marketing, or even just the visual design. People will promise you things, and yet it may not work out. And I used to actually work a day job and a night job, so I could always sort of be on to the next thing. And one of the things they taught us at Parsons was being a good designer. Maybe 1% are going to be the designers, and the rest are going to take all the other interesting jobs that are related to design. They also taught us that it's 97% hard work, 3% talent. And I know many who I went to Parsons with, or I felt were more talented than I was, but I worked harder and it paid off. So interestingly enough, not interesting, it's tragic. My father died while I was at Parsons. And I grew up in a traditional family where my mother didn't work. And she said, and I was married at the time. She said, well, I'm not going to pay for you to go to school. You should stay home and be a wife. And I just thought, I'm too talented. I want to work hard. I want to support myself. And so I got scholarship and I finished. But a few years after school, I received a check from my father's estate. He had left me no money. And although he was a very successful entrepreneur, and it was a check for an enormous amount of money, $25,000. And I had been in discussions with a company called Liberty of London. Now, many of you may know that. It's an old company, beautiful prints and everything. And at the time, no one was using them in America. And they kept saying to me, would you work with our prints? Your colors are beautiful, so on and so forth. And so I kept my day job. I went to the Liberty of London. I knew nothing about business. So what I will tell you through this talk is you must learn about business. I took my $25,000 check. I walked into Liberty of London and I said, here, I'm going to buy $25,000 worth of assorted prints, ship them to my living room, and I'll figure out what I'm going to do with them. And that's exactly what I did. And I was taught by my first boss, always be kind to everyone you meet. You treat them the way you want to be treated. And you never know when you're going to meet them again. So for example, one of the people I met from Harper's Bazaar magazine who was delivering samples when you sent them to be photographed, she eventually became my editor. And because I had been so nice to people, they were dying to buy clothing from me. And so at night, I made my first collection, all from Liberty of London prints, and I would mix them together and everything. And here's the business part. As I said, I had no business training. I knew how to lay out a pattern. I knew what a dress, what the cost of a garment was, but I would literally hold it up and go, well, what should I charge for this? I knew nothing about margin and profit, but just the same, the one lucky thing I had done was because I had this money, I had enough fabric to last me at least for a year. So I never had to pay for the fabric. And what I worked out, because my clothing had become very popular when I worked for the other designers I worked for, that I could get Bloomingdale's who wanted my clothing. I said, here's the deal. When I deliver them, you're handing me a check. So I used to pack the dresses in my apartment. I had a little factory that I knew that would make them. I would get on my bicycle and I would deliver them to Bloomingdale's and they would hand me a check. And then I would pay the contractor. And therefore I had what was called dating. And that gave me at least 60 days and I always had cash flow. About a year into that first business, which was called Unger, I moved the business out of my apartment, quit my day job, and moved into the garment center, into a little place on 38th Street in the middle of Manhattan. And the reason I mention that is because that's what's happening today. The garment center is having to reorganize, rebuild. And I'll tell you about the project that I'm doing later. But everybody wants to bring production back to America and back to the countries. Like, for example, Israel. One of my favorite things was when I started a company in Israel called Have a Yofi Day. Have a Yofi, and it was about a good day. And one of the things about that, I did that so that I could bring product into America from Israel when Israel needed the help. But anyway, long story short, I had my first company for 23 years. Then my partner embezzled all the money and we actually went bankrupt. And then I thought, I'm done. But then, to be honest with you, my husband, who I supported for so many years, and I had 2 children, he decided to leave. And therefore, I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps, 2 weeks later, start over. And luckily, my factory gave one of my salespeople, they were related. He said, here's $1 million if you can get Unger to start a business again. So 2 weeks later, I started Unger New York, and it's still in existence. And then several years ago, it's now 8 years ago, I have been on the board of Parsons, my alma mater, for many years, and a trustee of the new school, which is the overriding school. And by the way, my brother went to Princeton, my niece went to Princeton, so I know it well. And then I was asked to be the chairman of the board of Parsons. I would say this has been probably the second best job I've ever had in my life, because it gives me the opportunity to give back, to meet all of you, help you, mentor you. I invest in people's companies. I'm an advisor. I do so many things that I really, really enjoy now. And then I also started in 2010 Unger Family Foundation with my 2 sons. And we support cancer care and cancer research, and many other researchers. And we do scholarships for young people talented in the arts who otherwise wouldn't be able to survive. So that's me. And by the way,
Thank you so much.
I have 9 grandchildren, and I'm about to
wow.
So I have 3 very talented young budding designers, my granddaughters, because I only have sons.
I mean, it sounds like you have so much experience, and it's really inspiring to hear how much you have really, stuck with it and really worked your way towards achieving what you have today. And I think that is a really important thing to realize as young designers and young creatives, that everything you do pays off in terms of your hard work and not just having amazing talent. You mentioned that it was your second favorite job. What is your first favorite job, I guess?
Well, I've had several, but I think I love, one of the questions you asked that I'll sort of bring up is, what are some of the things you need? What has made you, other than the hard work, a viable designer? And I consider myself sort of a problem solver. And I think all designers are problem solvers. And probably today more than ever, your design capabilities help you look at things and problems and situations and opportunities differently. So I've had several great opportunities. And aside from the fact of my regular collection of clothing, one of the things, and I think I can say this, remember I talked about goals. My goal, because I grew up luckily very fortunate. I had beautiful clothes. My father did very well. But when I went to college and I saw how differently everybody dressed, they didn't have what I did. And I thought, when I worked for Jeffrey Bean, he made very expensive clothes. And at that time I thought, I think I could do this for the masses. So my motto was, when I went into business, I wanted to cover the asses of the masses. And I did. My clothing was not expensive, but it was well made in beautiful colors. And then I focused on fit, because fit is so important, whether you're doing furniture, whether you're doing clothing, but especially for women. Women try clothing on, especially dresses, and I specialized in dresses. You have to know how to fit it. And they always go, dress doesn't fit. It's because it's not made properly. The pattern isn't correct. I understood women's bodies. I'd been in the dressing rooms for years and years and years. And so I had this other motto called, my folds cover your folds. The hardest thing for man, woman, or anything is to wear something that's flat. Like even a t-shirt, if it's fitted, every roll shows. And so if you put folds and softness, my folds cover your folds. And so my favorite job was the different pockets of clothing that I made. So I made one collection called Unger after 9/11. And I made it in New York because I felt our city needed, help, needed people to be working almost exactly like today. And that everybody in a family was going to have to go to work. Every family was going to have the husband and the wife work. So I made a collection of work clothing that was very simple and beautiful fabric, where it always remained the same color. So if you bought a black top, it would always match the black bottom. And it mixed and matched, but I always made fun tops to wear under these classic clothes. And I loved that collection, did it for many years until it was too expensive to produce in America. Then another really fun thing I did, I always loved pajamas and I always loved print. So I made a collection called KJs instead of PJs.
That's
And
great.
finest, thinnest cotton. And everybody, they just loved it. I mean, I still have them. I still come back and make them periodically. And as I mentioned to you earlier, it's sunny today, so I have my sunglasses, which these are sort of my Audrey Hepburn style. So I've done sunglasses. I once had an underwear collection called Unger wear. I've had a lot of fun.
It sounds like a very, creative environment. And I mean, I think your focus on really catering to the needs of who you see as, your users, your end, the people who wear your garments is really incredible, especially in the discussions that are happening today with fashion. And I think that also as the head of several fashion companies, you're in the unique position to influence where fashion goes and what are the main points of importance and where the fashion industry is going. So where do you see that in the future going? And what do you think is the next big thing that, people want?
Abigail, what I'd like to say is, how do you stay there? In other words, my company's 50, I've been in the business for over 50 years. And I graduated college in 1968 from Parsons. So one, do your homework first. You can't plan the future until you understand some of the past or who your audience is. Always remember, you may want to design something, anything. And like I talked to you, you're an architect. So you may want to design a beautiful building or apartment and so on and so forth. But if it isn't fit the mood of what your customer and your client wants, then you're doing it for yourself and not for them. And it's the same way with clothing. Understand who your audience is. And one way to do it is you must do research, do focus groups. What I did is I asked, at the time there was no internet, I went to Glamour magazine, who would cover me often. I said, will you share your data on who the buying public is for the next 10 years? And I was lucky. They said it's the baby boomers. Well, I'm a baby boomer. So I have grown up with my customer. And always talk to your customer, whether it's through texting, internet, actual talking on a phone. Eventually, when we're out of this pandemic someday, I hope you'll be able to see them. One thing you must build is loyalty. Whether it's designing clothing, you can change with trend, but never forget what your core is. So my core was a certain kind of fitted dress. Yes, I might change the colors according to what trend is, and I often went against trend. So if everybody was doing blue, I would do green so it would stand out. Do what you feel is right. Following trend is no longer really what's important. And so loyalty to your customer, get to know them. I have dressed a young girl, I usually did her first dress, especially, whether it was her sweet 16, her bar mitzvah, her bat mitzvah, whatever. And then I dressed the moms. My son met his wife actually at Yale, because the a cappella group there all had to wear black dresses, and they were all mostly Kay Unger dresses. And, so I do prom, I did guest of wedding, mother of the bride, mother of the groom, first, reunion, anniversary parties, but they always knew they could come to me because it fit. So in looking at the future, know what your expertise is and reach out and find out who your customer is. Don't decide who they are. You must listen, because when you don't, they disappear. And learn how to grow with them. And my way was going out there. I would travel 30 weeks a year doing personal appearances. And that's how I also did my philanthropy. Every show I did, 10% went back to the cancer care unit in that town or helping young children. So what's going to happen for the future? This is what everybody's asking. And we've put a lot of think tanks together and discussion groups. Those groups actually pivoted on March 9th to make this new venture that I'm in called Fashion for the Frontlines, where everybody's pivoting into different forms of medical supplies. We pivoted as a group in the industry into PPE and gowns for, first of all, New York, which is an epicenter, and New York City, New York State. We supply many other states, and we'll supply other countries necessary. But the future is you have to look at everything you're doing in a different way. It's going to be changed. You know, whether it's a beauty company and you've switched to making sanitizers or antimicrobial products. I mean, people now write to me because we have a website that are sending me products of all different types. So look at science. Maybe our president isn't looking at it, but everybody else should be, because this is going to guide you, especially in design. So yes, everybody's making masks, but there's many quality of masks. And look at how they're made. I mean, I ordered some from different designers, but think about fit. Think about how it's comfortable around your ears. Try them on with glasses. Believe it or not, try them on with hearing aids. You know, everything you have to think about. You know, with glasses, how do you make it so they don't fog up? How do you make sure? I mean, to be honest with you, I think masks should come like bra sizes. You know, I've got a big nose. I can't wear every mask. Some people have long faces, some have tiny. It's about every product, but also make sure anything you do for the future, you think about, is it healthy? Is it healthy for the environment? Sustainability is what we must be looking at. Climate change. I'm concerned now that, you know, one hospital here in New York, they use 30,000 disposable gowns a week. Where is that going?
Oh my goodness.
Which of you out there is inventing the fabric that disposes, that, you know, is not bad for the environment? You know, where does all this go? Can we teach everybody to do everything reusable? Can we cut up things that are sitting around that are waste? This is where, you know, the circular economy is what I want you to be looking at in every way, shape, or form, not just fashion. And can you look at the design problems and the way and the supply chain? How do you get your product to someone safely? Who's going to go in a dressing room? How do we handle returns? What is the best sterilizing method? All of you are so well educated. You know the internet, you know technology. Bring it into everything that you do and solve the problems, because this is your world and we need you, because certainly all of us don't know how to do it. We've done a terrible job. We're counting on you, and there are jobs for you.
I mean, I think it's amazing to see so many different variations of how industries have adapted. You were mentioning, you know, perfume companies creating hand sanitizer. The entire fashion industry has a vital role, you know, in creating all of this, you know, reusable medical equipment. And I'm just in awe that even architecture with their 3D printing is creating PPE equipment, something that's happening in our own labs and kind of like studios. So I wanted to ask you, it's kind of like it's first of all, I think it's amazing what you are doing, and fashion as an industry, I think, has really felt the impact of Corona. We see so many new businesses, or old businesses actually, going out of business, you know, storefronts who are closing, and on the other side, a huge rise in online fashion industries. So and I guess you're also an entrepreneur, so you see the business side of it. How do you create such a large industry, something that doesn't pivot as quickly to changing situations, and how do you effectively create that change?
Well, I can't only talk about America, because certainly on my board at Parsons, I have some of the top people from Kering and LVMH, the two largest companies in the world in luxury. But they're also donating a great deal, and I speak to them, and they're making gowns, the hospital gowns for medical workers of all the different grades. This is something that is a way for fashion companies, big and small, within your own communities around the world, to get their factory going, even if it's just part of it, while they figure out what are they actually going to sell, what do people want. So look at our environment. We're speaking to each other via Zoom. Okay, so you have no idea what I'm wearing on the bottom. But you can see that I have a beautiful shirt with ruffles. I have a fun coat on. That's a one-of-a-kind Gianni Versace coat that I bought so many years ago at an auction to raise money for AIDS. So here we are in another form of a pandemic, and people will want things that make them feel good. But the fact that tight jeans may not be very popular in the future, and maybe we should be cutting them up and making masks and spraying them with an antimicrobial spray, because to be honest with you, we're all sitting on our asses. And elastic is one of the properties that is so hard to get right now, because elastic is used for the face masks. Now people are using rubber bands or self-ties. It's used on the cuffs of all the gowns, and it's used in every kind of pants these days, because people, when you sit, they want to be comfortable. So what we're looking at also, look at anything antimicrobial that's actually officially antimicrobial. Make sure it's not just a spray that after washings is going to come off. So this is where design and invention and innovation is so important. Get out there and find raw materials that are healthy, that can actually have properties that make the clothing safe. So when you go outside, you'll be wearing a mask and you'll be wearing gloves. And look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, our Supreme Court Justice. She always wears gloves. And I found out, because I just love her, the reason why long before this happened was she had cancer, and she wanted to make sure, because she had to shake hands, that she would not get germs. So this is part of who we are going to be. So who's going to make the coolest gloves? And who makes a pretty glove that goes over maybe a disposable glove? What's easily rewashable? Do you put them in the washing machine? Now everybody's selling little sterilizers where you put your mask and so on. There's so much opportunity. It's explosive. You have technical background, and be open to pivoting. Read, listen, and get out there and watch safely how people are moving. What are they doing? I think about it, I go and pick up a coffee, outside, but I bring a cup and I make them pour it into my cup. What are you doing, to help the different ways you're doing things? And with so much food being delivered and picked up, and I'm sure it's the same way where you are in Israel or where anybody is around the country, please don't throw away those plastic containers. Reuse them over and over and over again. And, just the wipes, you have to wipe your mail, you have to wipe your boxes. Maybe there's other ways. Let's think about how to make everything safe. And it's a huge industry. And the fashion industry, of course, is the core of so many countries. And it's the third largest industry in the world. So yes, unfortunately, people will close, but think about collaboration. I now worked for the last 8 weeks with a factory owner and designer in the New York Garment Center. She put together 4 to 5 competing sewing factories, and they're all working together and they're making PPE. It's a time of collaboration. So reach out to people, because the only way we're all going to survive if there aren't so many tiny businesses, if we work together.
I think that's an important role as well. And I mean, our conference is the idea, our theme is impact. And I think that's exactly where the intersection of both design and impact is really at its maximum. And I think that being able to see these collaborations, even within very, competitive fields, is where our humanity allows us to go forward. And I mean, I think design, as you were mentioning, has a huge role in this. I have a quick question. Do you think that, you mentioned gloves will be in fashion. Do you think face coverings will also be part of upcoming trends?
So here's the thing. There will be no fashion shows probably this year. And the fact of the matter is, even galas, okay? You kids are just getting out of school, but we do fundraisers Princeton does them, Parsons does them, everybody does them. Going to a big dinner, and people used to say to me, here, I'll give you $1,000 so long as I don't have to come and eat that bad chicken dinner. Well, now we're doing everything virtually, and we just did our commencement virtually. It was so much better than sitting and sweating in the cap and gown and listening to a very long speech. Let's look at, how it's going to be different, and how online is quite helpful. But we also have to get out there. And I just think that in so many ways, you can really make a difference. Even if you write about it, there's so much content needed. And I think that what we're all here to do for you is mentorship is extremely important. So don't forget to mentor those who are still in college. Think about if you're a freshman. Granted, you didn't get to go to graduation. And you'll look back at this year, and maybe your virtual parties will be so memorable because you'll have a video of it. But think about the kids who are now starting with a virtual education. Think about what it's like for them. How do you mentor them and teach them what we're trying to teach you? That's going to be really making you feel good. This is a time of giving back, and we're all suffering. And these small businesses, there are ways, there are funds in every country, I'm sure. We're doing a lot of fundraising and looking at what small companies need money who are qualified to stay open. So here's one thing that I haven't answered yet, and that is, what do you need to know in fashion that maybe I didn't know or I feel is so vital? And you remember I mentioned that I knew nothing about business, and yet I was, an entrepreneur. What do? You go out there and you just fill a white space. And if you have to do it again, you would never want to do it again. But when I say business, being an artist and a designer does not mean you don't have to be a total human and an intelligent one. This is why I love Princeton and what they do, because you get a full education. You need to know about history. You need to know about politics. You need to take anthropology, which teaches you about teamwork. We're now talking about teams and collaborating. And also, you need to know how to look at a balance sheet and understand. And even though you're a designer, the one mistake I made, I didn't look at it carefully because I brought in business partners who I thought knew how to do that better than I did. But then they stole all the money. I kind of started to see it happen, but I didn't stop it. You must be your own best advocate. And you read something that I had said, and that is, pick your partners carefully. Pick your partners in life. And the same way you would pick a husband or a wife or a partner, spend time with those you're going to be in business with. You don't need them. You can pay for them. Give yourself a chance. You can do so much more than you think if you educate yourself. Always reach out for professionals. But if you do decide to take in partners, spend time with them, with their families. Go to restaurants, see how they treat a waiter. Take a taxi. Do they, yell? Go driving with them in traffic. Do they have road rage? You will learn a lot. How do they tip? Do they care about others? Because, and go spend time in their homes. Is it a pigsty? Is it, are they sloppy? You must learn about them the way you would about a partner in your life, because you will spend more time with them than you do with the people you live with.
I think this is fascinating, and I wanted to ask you, I mean, this is very different than kind of, the general stigma that the fashion industry kind of suffers from, for movies like Devil Wears Prada and this very high intensity field. So how do you see, is that a fair representation? Yes, no, or why do you think that is?
Well, I've seen it about 50 times. The movie.
It's a great movie, for sure. It's a classic.
We have definitely met Anna Wintour and met many of the people who worked for her. It is very true to life, that movie. But that's only one part of it. That's the magazine industry, which is actually suffering probably as much or more than any, because people want more authenticity. Yes, a model or a movie star can sell a cover, but I think now that things are changing, you'll notice they're focusing more on people who do wonderful things, on giving back, and they write more about people who, especially women, how they're running their company and how they treat the people that they're with. And even our political candidates, when there's an article written, whether it's true or not, that they treat their assistants badly, they don't eventually go very far. So it is true, but I think people are looking at fashion so differently now. And people still want to buy fancy handbags, and fine, I don't know. I can't imagine taking a very expensive handbag and rubbing it down with a Clorox wipe. So, things will be different. But I've had jobs like that, and don't take them unless you want to just do it for the experience. Look, we feel many of you will have 10 jobs by the time you're 30. Or let's say you may be older than that now, but you will maybe have 10 jobs in your first 10 years out of school. That's okay. Why? It's very important to sometimes first find out what you don't want to do. And you don't know that till you try it, which is why internships and so on. And by the way, you may take an internship now and not get paid while you do something you don't love that you do get paid for. That's why I used to work in the day and the night. And one was for my passion and one was to pay the bills. So yes, The Devil Wears Prada is a true vision of the fashion industry. And what we haven't talked about is content. And yes, in the fashion industry, your Instagram, your Snapchat, TikTok, whatever the different things are, yes, it's important, but try to remember, make it substantial. Really, you can post as many pictures as you want, but pick your focus. Don't just do it all over the place. If you're trying to have a mission or you're promoting what you make your Instagram and all your social focus, and read carefully about what you write, because then you'll get a good following. It's not just all famous actors and actresses. Yes, that's important. And if they wear your clothing, it's great. But if you develop something with content that's worthwhile, in this day and age, that's going to be really, really important.
I think today, I mean, we are definitely experiencing new tools and new ways to, bring ourselves forward. And I mean, I know that all of the designers who are participants in the conference, they're each kind of trying to build their own, their own baseline and their own identity and brand and aesthetic. So, you're the head of the Parsons board, and I was wondering we have a couple of Parsons students actually who are a part of this conference, and I think you're also extremely relevant to the other participants, or either UX UI, and you talked about fit and kind of like researching user needs. So what do you think is crucial pedagogically in a design education where, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily go to school for these things and they just experience it firsthand? And alternatively, what do you think people should be focusing to get out of this, their design schoolings or education in the future?
Well, I think the pedagogy that has to go along with design, we call it sort of systems. And that is, one, in clothing, looking at how you're taking care of the entire population. That means size, ethnicity, just the disabled, for example, is a $55 billion opportunity. They need clothing that they can do themselves if they're able, or that someone can help them with. They need products for their wheelchairs. Many of our students graduate doing that. How do you, you know, with many different diseases, there's different problems. If you can't see, then you can feel. Those are incredible. You need to learn about different ways that people live and solve that. You need to learn about sustainability. There will be no world if we don't. So learning about what fabrics are right, what are wrong, what needs to be developed, different ways of sewing, perhaps, you know, all kinds of things that make waste much less, and what can be biodegradable and what is real. So organic cotton, you know, is it really the right way? What about washing? Should we be, you know, lowering what we wash? Should we be drying? Should we be using paper towels? Should we be using cloth towels? Should we be cooking in plastic or not? Should we be using microwaves? You need science along with design. And it often collaborates. Like we often collaborate with MIT and other universities. So sustainability, technology, 3D, so you mentioned 3D. So we have a making center that I'm very proud of. We call it Making on Fifth Avenue. So yes, we have the 3D machines, and they can make the parts for the ventilators and the mask, but we also have 3D Shimaseki knitting machines. Well, those are being used now to make the N95 mask because they're knitted and molded. And we have knitting machines that have zero waste, where we could take a picture of you, Abigail, and in 2 hours, without measuring you, print out a new sweater for you that will fit with zero waste. So being creative, and it's like drawing an architecture or drawing a blueprint. How do you lay out your clothing with the least amount of seams and the least amount of waste? And then what I learned from my company 25 years ago in Israel was we did knit garments, and we made velour, knitted velour, and out of the scraps we made toys. Wow. So what do you do with, and then we gave them away. So what do you do with your waste is important. Technology of any kind. Can we build it into the clothing? Will it tell us what our temperature is? Or will something in every garment tell us if we're infected? Someone's going to design that, and somebody should. And if it's right and it's authentic and it works, it help save us from this pandemic and others that are going to probably happen in the future. Learn how to write. That pedagogy will never go away. Now that you're posting and you're writing all the time, it's so important, your vocabulary, learning how to speak and sell yourself, because right now you're doing it every single day via Zoom. So learn these skills, it's so important.
And you mentioned to me before that you think that the future of design is actually going to be a better future for designers post, post COVID. How do you think that future will look?
Well, I think it'll be a while before people, wear the kind of dress that I make, the very dressy one. And yet, just getting dressed today to do this conference and putting on a nice shirt, putting on a jacket, and I actually have my favorite, which I'm going to take off and show everybody, my absolute favorite new shoes.
Those are amazing. The heel, wow.
Got to die for. So these are
that is amazing.
Simone Rocha, And I bought them because I wore them in Paris because I did our first gala. I'm also president of Parsons Paris in January, right before the pandemic broke out. And I had to have these shoes to wear in Paris. So it was kind of like living Devil Wears Prada. But think about
now you can dress for yourself.
But think about it. I think people are going to want to spend money on not so much jewelry. Like I used to wear a lot of bracelets. No more. I have an unbelievable collection. But because I have to wash my hands all the time, the bracelets are annoying. I'm not going to wear rings, but I would wear earrings. I didn't put them on today, but earrings. Think of all the things that fit our new way of life and our way of life that's going to stay the same. So and like I said, gloves. I think people are going to wear fun shoes, and they better be comfortable. These are actually pretty comfortable because I think we're going to be walking and biking many more places because public transportation is scary. And what's the best new helmet? Everybody, does it fold? Does it this? There are some like that. But if everybody's going to be using different kind of transportation, what does that look like? And what are they designing for that transportation? Do you always travel with some kind of folding seat that has a cover that you take off and wash that's safe if you want to sit on a park bench? Look at what we're living through now. It's not going to change. What's the bag they carry? And comfortable, because I think we're going to be moving around a lot and not sitting in a car. Yes, you might be driving, but those of us who live in a city, you're going to be walking, you're going to be biking, you're going to be scooting. What products do they need and what comfort level? And, think of army pants or, with lots of pockets. I wear a fishing vest.
I love clothes that have pockets. I find that it's my biggest need.
So if you look at a fishing vest, because I went, fly fishing, and it has all the pockets, and I've done this for years. I decorate it. But when I go out now, I have wipes in a plastic bag in one pocket. Then I have paper towels in another. I have my little wallet because I don't want to carry a big purse. You have your phone. I carry a portable charger. What are, you're in combat. You guys are used to it in Israel. But if you're in combat, you need to be prepared.
I mean, I think that pockets, especially in women fashion, is a personal fight that I really push for. And it's always known that women have tiny pockets and men have, these large, very handy, places to put stuff. So I'm very excited if that were, to be really a thing. And thank you. We're going to start wrapping up, but I wanted to say thank you so much for all your pearls of wisdom. And I think that even myself, where I don't come from the fashion world, it's amazing to see the same concepts across disciplines that are coming forward and really about the interrelationship of these disciplines and how everyone is moving together to make a change and thinking really critically. And I think this system thinking is exactly what we need right now, the integration and working together. So I think that's what I'm gonna, what I'm taking away from today. And as a last fun question, I guess, what would you consider your favorite thing in your closet?
Well, it was hard for me this is one, my jacket, which is pretty fabulous.
It's amazing.
And by the way, it is reversible. You can wear it on the yellow side. So that's one. And then I have an incredible Prada vintage dress that I bought when I wore to my first Parsons Gala. And it kind of it's like big paillettes in the colors of Coke bottles. Wow. And as though they had ironed them and they're crunchy. And it's a very simple shape. So it doesn't matter if I'm at my thinnest or my fattest, I can always wear it. And then my goal is, of course, that you should wear your fancy clothes, your gowns, whatever it is, a minimum of 30 times. And they should be reused or loaned to others. So I'm on about my 15th wearing of this dress. And I read, the last time I wore was the Parsons Paris Gala. And there's something about the coloring. I can wear it winter or summer, and it's not to the floor. And I just love it. And
It's versatile for everything.
And you can fold it up and it doesn't wrinkle. You don't ever have to press it. Periodically, I always have to sew it. I carry a little bag in my handbag when I wear it, and I pick up the sequins that fall off. It's a lot of fun.
That's great to hear. Any last words of wisdom that you would like to share?
Sure. I just think the wisdom is more for now and what you're living through. And I feel very, very strongly that we're all experiencing it in a very different way. Keeping busy, I'm lucky, I'm working night and day. But whether you're busy or not, please take care of your mind and your mental health. We all talk about our physical health, but this is a mental drain. And please reach out to your friends, for yourself. There's lots of ways, and don't feel badly, because we all need help, and it helps to talk to each other, and not just on Zoom. Pick up and have a one-on-one FaceTime call. And we're all feeling it. We feel it in different ways. I know I just eat candy and all the things I'm not supposed to. Other people drink. And
chocolate is always the answer.
Chocolate, TV, everybody has a different way, and you can become very cranky, young, old. It's really challenging. And just know we're here for you, seriously, so many of us. So reach out, and don't be ashamed of that. It's the ones who don't reach out that are going to suffer. So please, you're talented. This too shall pass. I know my son graduated, my oldest son, from college right after 9/11, and he thought it was the end of the world. But he found something to do. He's a comedy writer that he could do anywhere, anytime. Took a while to sell something, but he did. So you might have to relook at what you were trained for, and how do you do something, whatever is in front of you, that will keep you going. And then, your career will fall into place. But get any job you can, or make one up and sell something, or help people with children, whatever. Everybody needs help.
This has been lovely and so enlightening, and I really, really appreciate it. And I will still continue thinking about all of this. So with that, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you, Abigail, and everybody, and really, congratulations. It will be a great world out there. You're going to make it that way. I'm counting on you.
For sure. Hopefully, we're all moving forward in a positive direction. Thank you so much.